Hi, my name is Tanya Clark, and I'm the chair of Norwescon 43. While I'm sad we're not able to be together this year, I am excited by this opportunity to present the Philip K. Dick Awards Ceremony, sponsored by the Philadelphia Science Fiction Society. For those of you who have not been to Norwescon, we are the premier science fiction and fantasy convention here in the Pacific Northwest. We happen each year around Easter weekend near Seattle, Washington. We have over 500 hours of programming, 200 panelists including authors, artists, and scientists, as well as a variety of special events and games. We hope that you'll be able to join us next year for this exciting event, April 1st through 4th, 2021. Visit our website at www.norwescon.org for more information. See you next year.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for turning out or tuning in for this year's presentation of the Philip K. Dick Awards. Obviously, we all wish we could be in SeaTac, Washington right now at Norwescon, gathered together to give out the awards, but obviously wasn't in the cards this year. So we're doing the best we can. Let's give a big thanks to everyone at Norwescon, especially Alan and Kathy Bond, for going well above and beyond the call of duty to put this award presentation together. And of course, the redoubtable William Sidoris, who comes through every year with a great production. That's the word I'm looking for. The Philip K. Dick Award is given out every year to celebrate the best works of science fiction published in paperback original form. Shortly after Phil Dick died, Tom Dish had the idea of honoring him with an award, and Tom, David Hartwell, Paul Williams, and Charles Brown, and I think one or two other people, cooked up the idea of making it an award to honor the best paperback original, because so much of PKD's best work had come out as paperback originals in the 60s and 70s at a time when the form was really the least loved format in publishing, the kind of ugly child. And unfortunately, there's, to a certain extent, that hasn't changed in that paperbacks are still not as highly regarded as they ought to be. So we have this award to do something to change that. One of the things we do with the award is we allow each of the nominees to read a selection from their own work, or have someone read for them if they're not available. And I think we should get into those right now without further ado.
Hi, this is Susan Pelwick. I am reading the opening of my story Windows, which is the first story in All Worlds Are Real. The bus smells like plastic and urine, and the kid sitting next to Vanjie has his music cranked up way too high. It's leaking out of his earbuds, giving her a headache. He's a big boy, sprawled out across his seat and into hers as if she's not there at all. She squeezes herself against the window, resting her head against the cool glass to try to ease the throbbing behind her eyes. Maybe the kid will get off at the next stop in 40 minutes or so. Maybe nobody else will get on to take his seat. The bus is completely full, and the waves of chatter and smell might have made Vanjie sick, even without the booming bass. It's a 10-hour ride to see Graham. Vanjie just hopes she'll get in this time. She can't shake her gut fear that everything's lined up too neatly, that something has to go wrong. More than once she spent the time and money to get down there. The time's no problem, but the money's not so easy, not with her monthly check as small as it is. To find the prison on lockdown, nobody in or out, and God only knows what's going on inside. All you get are reports you can't trust, and you sit in the shabby town library Googling the news every 2 seconds until it's time to catch the bus back home because you can't afford another night in a motel. Sometimes it's been days until Graham's been able to call out, until Vanjie's been able to hear his voice again. She always accepts the collect charges, but they never talk long. Those calls cost. Vanjie's small overnight bag is under her feet. She's got her purse strap crossed over her body and her arms crossed protectively over that, as if the kid next to her might snatch the bag and sprint to the front of the bus, diving out the door at 70 miles an hour. She knows this wouldn't happen even if she looked like someone worth robbing, even if what's in her purse had the slightest value to anybody except her and maybe Graham. He won't value it as much as she does. She doesn't see how he could. Every time she thinks about it, she feels a great weight in her chest, a clot of grief and guilt and relief and love, and sometimes a tiny bit of pride creeps in there too. One of her kids got away, is getting away, even if it's too far, but she squashes that always. No one else would think she deserved to feel proud. She doesn't think she deserves to feel proud. Pride is dangerous. So's luck, because it always turns, and there's already been too much this trip. The kid next to her yawns and shifts, giving her an inch or two more room, and she takes it, grateful. It's getting dark, sunset a dull bruise to the west, obscured by clouds and by the dirty window, but at least she can see out, watch the gray highway rushing past. When she first started making this trip 3 years ago, she promised herself she'd look out the window the whole time so she'd be able to tell Graham about it. But there's nothing next to the road but flat fields, corn and alfalfa. Sometimes a combine, but she can never make out people. She looked for cows the first few times, horses. No luck. She'll tell him about this sunset, though. She'll make it sound prettier than it is. And when it gets completely dark, she'll peer up through the window and try to make out stars. Sometimes she can see them. She can't remember if there's a moon tonight, but she'll look for that, too. Vanjie feels like she has to look because Graham can't. He doesn't get to see the night sky anymore. Zell doesn't get to see anything else. She thought she was so lucky when she won the ticket, blind lottery, her name pulled out of the hat with all those other folks. It still rips Vanjie's heart open to remember how eager Zell was to leave all of them, leave everything forever. I'm going to the stars, she said, but all she's doing is living in a tin can, living and dying there. And they'll make babies out of her eggs who'll live the next leg, and babies out of their eggs who'll live the next. And finally there will be a planet at the end of it, that world the scientists found that's supposed to be as much like Earth as makes no never mind. Zell will never see it. She'll be long dead. Her children's children will be long dead by the time they get there. She'll never see sunset or alfalfa again. As far as Vanjie's concerned, she's got 2 kids in for life. She's just glad she can still visit one of them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Tolmie, reading from The Little Animals. Most of this book concerns the early scientist Anthony van Leeuwenhoek using a little microscope like this to do science. The other main character is the Goose Girl, originally drawn from their brothers Grimm, and she looks at the world of microbes in quite a different way. When he, Leeuwenhoek, returns to the kitchen, the girl is winding the finished braids around her head, tucking in the ends and tying it all up again with a handkerchief. He leaves her to it. When she is done, he opens his mouth and says the first thing that presents itself, popping into his head like a jack-in-the-box. He asks her, "What did you see in the forest when you were traveling? You said that you saw strange things." He realizes, as soon as he utters it, that he is prompting her to say more about the animalcules. The girl looks him full in the face for a moment, and then, as if she has received the answer to a question she did not pose in words, she sits abruptly down on the floor near the fire. Leeuwenhoek suppresses the urge to do the same. The idea of sitting in a chair suddenly seems pretentious. Nonetheless, he draws one out from the table and sits down. The Goose Girl gazes into the flames and speaks in her light monotone. "We were in the woods a long time," she says. "It was always raining or snowing. The geese did not like it. They smelled foxes and things and were afraid. They never left me alone for a minute. I had been sick in Kampen. A woman looked after me. But once I had left, I got sick again, shivering. The hanky, my mother's one, I began to hear it buzzing or whispering like bees in the distance as it lay inside my dress. Maybe it got warm and woke up because I was so hot. I thought it was my mother talking to me. What did it say? Interrupts Leeuwenhoek. Warnings, it seemed like. Excitements, fears, not in words, a kind of reaching out. I thought it was my mother comforting me, maybe singing like at nighttime. But you think that no longer? No, the little animals, they are talking amongst themselves, not to me. I just overhear them, he suggests. She looks at him meditatively. Overhear. Yes, I overhear them. Leeuwenhoek, needing some time to think about this, returns to his original question. What did you see in the forest? Many things. Some were just the dreams of fever, but one morning just past dawn, we were sheltering under a big tree on the edge of a clearing. The geese were sleeping, and I saw a huge figure as tall as a tree, but made of dark mist like smoke or twilight, striding. It was a woman, a huge, huge woman, heading back toward the town we had left, camping. There was a sound like wind in the trees. She made no marks in the grass, not even in the dew. She had enormous dark eyes like bruises in a white face. I could see the sun rising right through her. She walked right past me without seeing me. The geese woke up all at once, hissing and honking. And the hanky inside my dress, it was buzzing and muttering crazily. It pulled and pulled. It wanted me to follow. I was afraid. I did not want to follow, so I pulled out the hanky and threw it on the ground. My God, says Leeuwenhoek, what was it? The goose girl replies with her implacable authority. Plague. Plague? Yes. Soon after, plague came to Kampen. Many people died. I heard about it on the road. We saw it coming, the geese and me. That is what I think. Leeuwenhoek has no idea what to think, other than to be glad that she is not his daughter. They seem to have strayed from the topic of animalcules, or from any interpretation of them that he can understand. My mother died of plague in our village before. Almost everyone died, so I took the geese and left. When? Long ago. I think that the little animals in the hanky knew plague when she passed by. They were calling to her. They were calling? Why? He finds that he is asking in all seriousness, as if the girl were an oracle, the interpreter of the animalcules. Maybe they are her children. Leeuwenhoek pictures tiny crawling creatures in the blood on the handkerchief, waving and crying out to plague their mother. His head spins. He imagines temples, congregations, avenues, at a scale far too small to see, inhabited by minuscule, orderly monsters. Monsters with mothers, hierarchies and conclaves and councils, a town of animalcules. He will never be able to move again, lest he crush whole civilizations. But then, what civilization would cheer for plague? The girl looks up. The rain is stopping, she says. I will return to the geese now. If I can hear the little animals in the blood on the hanky, maybe you can see them. Do you want to look? Yes, says Leeuwenhoek, seizing this idea. If he can see animalcules there, he will be somewhat further ahead. She will become a more credible witness. He will have evidence. He pauses for a moment and then adds, Have you told anyone else about this vision? What is a vision? Says the girl. It was just something I saw. No, I have not told anyone. I don't like talking to people. Good, says Leeuwenhoek, and my advice is, don't tell anyone, at least for now. A vision is a moment of seeing something that nobody else can see. Ah, she replies, like you, seeing the little animals? Not waiting for his reply, she nods serenely and passes out the door, back to her waiting flock. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Ada Hoffman, author of The Outside, and I am going to read you something from actually kind of the middle of the book. So At this point in the story, our protagonist, Ysira Xian, has discovered that her old mentor, Dr. Talir, is actually a scary heretic whose research could kill everybody. So she's been recruited by a cyborg angel named Akavi to help track Dr. Talir down. So they've tracked her to intergalactic space, and they've found her weird spaceship. And now Akavi has gone into the spaceship to talk to Dr. Talir directly, while Ysira has her own work to do on the spaceship's outer surface. So this is actually the scene depicted on the book's cover. While Akavi and Dr. Talir conversed, Ysira was swallowed in darkness, crawling across the outside of the Alhazred. Her spacesuit's boots were magnetic and kept her safely stuck to the flexing hull. Curious clicks sometimes vibrated up through her feet, the only sound apart from her own breath. The Alhazred undulated, but in this much darkness, the movement was rarely visible. Without gravity, the sense of motion was different too. She felt dizzy and disoriented, but it was hard to tell if it was her patch of hull moving or the parts around it. Sometimes an extra wave of dizziness would come out of nowhere, and she'd look down, breathing deeply until she tested herself not to take another step. The pounding anxiety she'd felt in the Talon hadn't left her. Cold sweat stuck her spacesuit lining to her skin, and her hands shook as she tried to use the dinky penlight attached to the suit's wrist. It was the biggest energy source Akavi was willing to give her, but it illuminated only a foot of twisted steel at a time. Everything else was so black she might as well have been blind. Even the brightest galaxies were only faint smudges. Who knew what might be lurking in the darkness between them? Ysira's gut knew, and it wanted out of here, before something leapt out and killed her, or sucked the entire Alhazred out into a hole in space. A bot could have done this job better, except the interference out here would have played havoc with the bot. It was playing havoc with Ysira, too. More than once she jumped at shadows, or at nothing, and nearly fell off the Alhazred. She couldn't even see what she was doing. She swept the stupid light across the hull and found a corner, which she crept toward. She took out one of Akavi's small, black, antimatter grenades and carefully fastened it to the ship's edge. A contingency plan, Akavi had said. She hadn't signed up for this, had she? She'd known that the Angels of Nemesis were out to stop Dr. Talir. She'd known that heretics, taken in by Angels of Nemesis, usually died. But she hadn't expected to be the one wielding the weapon, setting the charges, to kill the woman who trained her for 3 long years. This felt wrong. She shuffled forward. There were 15 grenades left, and Akavi had wanted them evenly spaced around the Alhazred's surface area. She raised the penlight, counting footsteps. At 70, there was a dizzy lurch from a source she couldn't identify, and she had to stop for a while. 80, 90, 100. Another corner. She took out another grenade and bent down to tie it in place. Something grabbed her. Ysira shrieked and kicked. The grenade spun out harmlessly into space. She had no room for thought for a second or two, apart from wild mental images of monsters. She turned, and the flat of her palm hit something. She took a while to notice that it was not fighting back. It was merely a human-like hand, distorted by the bulk of a mortal-built spacesuit, which had come down on her shoulder. "Calm down," said a muffled female voice. Ysira gasped for breath. "Don't ever do that to me! I thought you were some kind of space monster!" The voice was matter-of-fact, unruffled. "You don't have a radio, so we need to be touching to transmit sound. And you're laying antimatter grenades on my ship, so I think we're even. Hello, Ysira. It's nice to see you." A light went on. Black and gold spots went swimming through Ysira's eyes. She blinked and swallowed hard. "Hello, Dr. Talir."
Rosewater Redemption by Tade Thompson. Prelude to Redemption. Last Days. I am the wrong person to tell this story, but nobody else is willing. The few who have all the facts, or at least more facts than I, have no interest in reliving it. I have no interest in reliving it, but I do want to tell the story, so I will. Some say information, like energy, can never truly be destroyed. I don't know about that. I'm not omniscient. I do know that the edges of my reality are blurring, so I'd better tell this quick. I am the wrong person to tell this story because I am too close to it, and not at all objective. I may even change some facts to make myself more relatable. If you can accept those caveats, then listen. My name is Oyen Da, and I'm here to tell you the beginning and the end. I've been chased about for most of my adolescence and all of my adult life. The government says I'm dangerous, and I am, if you think ideas are dangerous. A bullet is an idea. So is a shotgun. At times, I wear a jilaba so people can't know what time I am from. There is a problem with my time travel. Not that it isn't working. It is. What's problematic is the how. The guy who originated the machine, Conrad, he was intelligent, but from what I saw of his writing, deeply psychotic. I mean, what the hell does hook philobes mean? All Conrad's papers are full of such nonsense words, neologisms, and metonyms. No extrapolations by me, my father, or the professor could change it into the Lejad, not to mention the kind of miniaturization required for my cyborg parts. We should start. There is no time to waste, and yet I'm wasting time right now. It's not knowing where to start. So much has happened, so much is happening, and so much is yet to happen. Rosewater is on the world stage, with the African Union debating what to do with it. It won't be hard. They absorbed all of the Caribbean islands recently. Rosewater will be easy, except nothing about Rosewater is easy or predictable. Yes, it has free icing sugar, but you pay for the cake. You do. I am Oyen Da, the improbable, the bicycle girl. I am an artist. History is my clay. Follow me closely. There will be turns, sudden shifts of perspective, hurricanes without warning. I am Oyen Da, the improbable, and these are the last days of Rosewater. Killing in Rosewater. In 2068, because healing happens all the time now, instead of once a year, it is nigh on impossible to kill anybody within Rosewater city limits. And my crew of 4 has been shooting this man for 15 minutes, reloading, firing right into his brain, trying to destroy it so completely that when it regenerates, the person he was will no longer be, and the aliens can't use the body as a container. Wait, I say. Try a Kim charge. The skull is open, the face obliterated, but even so it is growing back. Talou places a charge in the middle cranial fossa and runs for cover. Fire in the hole! The blast is muted, but a chemical fire flows everywhere, and I know his brain cannot possibly survive that. We already have his ID chip. Come on, before the constables arrive, I say. They escape their way, and I fade into the xenosphere.
Hi there, I'm Sarah. I'm going to read to you from Sooner or Later, Everything Falls into the Sea. I'm going to read you the beginning of a story called Windmill Rove, which is a generation ship story. There's a story about my grandmother Windy, one I never asked her to confirm or deny, in which she took her fiddle on a spacewalk. There are a lot of stories about her, fewer of my parents' generation, fewer still of my own, though we're in our 50s now. Old enough that if there were stories to tell, they would probably have been told. My grandmother was an engineer, part of our original crew. According to the tale, she stepped outside to do a visual inspection of an external panel that was giving anomalous readings. Along with her tools, she clipped her fiddle and bow to her suit's belt. When she completed her task, she paused for a moment, tethered to our ship the size of a city, put her fiddle to the place where her helmet met her suit, and played Windmill Rove into the void. Not to be heard, of course, just to feel the song in her fingers. There are a number of things wrong with this story, starting with the fact we don't do spacewalks. for reasons that involve laws of physics I learned in school and don't remember anymore. Our shields are too thick, our velocity is too great, something like that. The blackout didn't touch ship records. Crew transcripts and recordings still exist, and I've listened to all the ones that might pertain to this legend. She laughs her deep laugh. She teases a tired colleague about his date the night before. She even hums Windmill Rove to herself as she works. But there are no gaps, no silences unexplained. Even if it were possible, her gloves would have been too thick to find a fingering. I doubt my grandmother would have risked losing her instrument out here where any replacement would be synthetic. I doubt, too, that she'd have exposed it to the cold of space. Fiddles are comfortable. At the same temperatures, people are comfortable. They crack and warp when they aren't happy. Her fiddle, my fiddle now. My final evidence, Windmill Rove is traditionally played in DD-AD tuning, with the first and fourth strings dropped down. As much as she loved that song, she didn't play it often, since retuning can make strings wear out faster. If she had risked her fiddle, if she had managed to press her fingers to its fingerboard, to lift her bow, to play, she wouldn't have played a DD-AD tune. This is as incontrovertible as the temperature of the void. And yet, the story is passed on among the ship's fiddlers. And yet her nickname, Windy, which appears in transcripts starting in the 5th year on board. Before that, people called her Beth or Green. She loved the song, I know that much. She sang it to me as a lullaby. At 12, I taught it to myself in traditional GDAE tuning. I took pride in the adaptation, pride in the hours I spent getting it right. I played it for her on her birthday. She pulled me to her, kissed my head. She always smelled like the lilacs in the greenhouse. She said, "Rosie, I'm so tickled that you do that for me, and you played it note perfectly, which is a gift to me in itself, but Windmill Rove is a DD-AD tune, and it ought to be played that way. You play it in another tuning, it's a different wind that blows." I'd never contemplated how there might be a difference between winds. I'd never felt one myself unless you counted air pushed through vents or the fan on a treadmill. After the birthday party, I looked up wind and read about breezes and gales and sirocco's, about haboobs and zephyrs. Great words, words to turn over in my mouth, words that spoke to nothing in my experience. The next time I heard the song in its proper tuning, I closed my eyes and I listened for the wind. Thank you.
This is Anita Taylor reading from Velocity Weapon by Megan O'Keefe. The first thing Sanda did after being resuscitated was vomit all over herself. The second thing she did was to vomit all over again. Her body shook, trembling with the remembered deceleration of her gunship breaking apart around her, stomach roiling as the preservation foam had encased her, shoved itself down her throat and nose and any other ready orifice. Her teeth jarred together, her fingers fumbled with temporary palsy against the foam stuck to her face. Dios, she hoped the shaking was temporary. They told you this kind of thing happened in training. The trembling would subside and the explosive evacuation cease. But it was a whole hell of a lot different, shaking yourself senseless while emptying every drop of liquid from your body, than to be looking at a cartoonish diagram with friendly letters claiming mild gastrointestinal discomfort. It wasn't foam covering her. She scrubbed, mind-numb from cold sleep, struggling to figure out what it was that encased her. It was slimy and goopy and, oh no! Sanda cracked a hesitant eyelid and peeked at her fingers. Thick, clear jelly with a slight bluish tinge coated her hands. The stuff was cold, making her trembling worse, and with a sinking gut she realized what it was. She joked about the stuff in training with her fellow gunshippers. Snail snot, nuri bath, and you only got dunked in it if you needed intensive care, with a capital T. Fuck, she tried to say, but her throat rasped on unfamiliar air. How long had she been in here? Sanda opened both eyes, ignoring the cold gel running into them. She lay in a white, enameled cocoon, the lid removed to reveal a matching white ceiling inset with true white bulbs. The brightness made her blink. The NutriBath was draining, and now that her chest exposed to air, the shaking redoubled. Gritting her teeth against the spasms, she felt around the cocoon, searching for a handhold. "Hey, Meddies," she called, then hacked up a lump of gel. "Got a live one in here." No response. Ugh, assholes were probably waiting to see if she could get out under her own power. Could she? She didn't remember being injured in battle, but the Meddies didn't stick you in a bath for a laugh. She gave up her search for handholds and fumbled trembling hands over her body, seeking scars. The baths were good, but they wouldn't have left a gunnery sergeant like her in the tub long enough to fix cosmetic damage. The gunk was only slightly less expensive than training a new gunner. Her face felt whole, chest and shoulders smaller than she remembered, but otherwise unharmed. She tried to crane her neck to see down her body, but the unused muscle screamed in protest. "Can I get some help over here?" she called, voice firmer now that she'd cleared it of the gel. Still no answer. Sucking down a few sharp breaths to still herself against the ache, she groaned and lifted her torso up onto her elbows until she sat straight, legs splayed out in front of her. Most of her legs, anyway. Sanda stared, trying to make the cold sleep-dragging brain catch up with what she saw. Her left leg was whole, if covered in disturbing wrinkles, but her right, that ended just above the place where her knee should have been. Tentatively, she reached down, brushed her shaking fingers over the thick lump of flesh at the end of her leg. She remembered. A coil fired by an Icaron railgun had smacked through the pilot's deck, slamming the nav panel straight into her legs. The vac pod chair she'd been strapped to had immediately deployed preserving foam, encasing her and smashed leg for Eta Prime scoopers to pluck out of space after the chaos of the Battle of Draley had faded. She picked at her puckered skin, stunned. Remembered pain vibrated through her body, and she clenched her jaw. Some of that cold she'd felt upon awakening must have been leftover shock from the injury, her body frozen in a moment of panic. Any second now, she expected the pain of the incident to mount, to catch up with her, and punish her for putting it off so long. But it didn't. The NutriBath had done a better job than she thought possible. Only mild tremors shook her. "Hey," she said, no longer caring that her voice cracked. She gripped either side of her open cocoon. "Can I get some fucking help?" Silence answered. Choking down a stream of expletives that would have gotten her court-martialed, Sanda scraped some of the gunk on her hands off onto the edges of the cocoon's wall and adjusted her grip. Screaming with effort, she heaved herself up to standing within the bath, balancing precariously on her single leg, arms trembling under her weight. The medibay was empty. "Seriously?" she asked the empty room. The rest of the medibay was just as stark white as her cocoon and the ceiling, its walls pocked with panels blinking all sorts of readouts she didn't understand the half of. Everything in the bay was stowed. The drawers were latched shut, the gurneys folded down and strapped to the walls. It looked ready for storage except for her cocoon, sitting in the center of the room and dripping NutriBath and vomit all over the floor. "Hey, naked wet girl in here," she yelled at the top of her sore voice. Echoes bounced around her, but no one answered. Oh, for fuck's sake. Not willing to spend God knew how long marinating in a stew of her own body's waste, Sanda clenched her jaw and attempted to swing her leg over the edge of the bath. She tipped over and flopped face first onto the ground instead. "Ow!" She spat blood and picked up her spinning head. Still no response. Who was running this bucket anyway? The medibay looked clean enough, but there wasn't a single Eta Prime logo anywhere. She hadn't realized she'd missed those stylized dual bodies with their orbital spin lines wrapped around them until this moment. Calling upon half-remembered training from her boot camp days, Sanda crawled her way across the floor to a long drawer. By the time she reached it, she was panting hard, but pure anger drove her forward. Whoever had come up with the bright idea to wake her without a medi on standby needed a good, solid slap upside the head. She may have been down to one leg, but Sanda was pretty certain she could make do with 2 fists. She yanked the drawer open and hefted herself up high enough to see inside. No crutches, but she found an extending pole for an IV drip. That'd have to do. She levered herself upright, stood for a moment, back pressed against the wall, getting her breath. The hard metal of the stand bit into her armpit, but she didn't care. She was on her feet again, or foot, at least. Time to go find a medi to chew out. The caster wheels on the bottom of the pole squeaked as she made her way across the medi bay. The door dilated with a satisfying swish, and even the stale, recycled air of the empty corridor spilled fresh compared to the nutrimeth she'd been swimming in. She paused and considered going back to find a robe. To hell with it. She shuffled out into the hall, picked a likely direction towards the pilot's deck, and froze. The door swished beside her, revealing a logo she knew all too well. A single plane, fiery wings encircling it, Icaron. She was on an enemy ship with one leg and naked. Sanda ducked back into the medi bay, scurried to the panel-spotted wall, silently cursing each squeak of the ivy stand's wheels. She had to find a comm link, and fast. Gel-covered fingers slipped on the touchscreen as she tried to navigate unfamiliar protocols. Panic constricted her throat, but she forced herself to breathe deep, to keep her cool. She captained a gunship. This was nothing. Half expecting alarms to blare, she slapped the icon for the ship's squawk box and hesitated. What in the hell was she supposed to broadcast? They hadn't exactly covered, "Help, I'm naked and legless" on an Icaron bucket during training. She bit her lip, punched in her own call sign, 1947, followed by 7500, the universal sign for hijacking. If she were lucky, they'd get the hint. 1947 had been hijacked. Made sense, right? She slapped send.
Now we come to the part that everybody tunes in for, the actual presentation of the awards. And if you've ever been to one of these before, when I've been the presenter, you know that I am not averse to dragging it out a little bit. But this year, given the circumstances, I'm not going to let it go too long. It'll probably crash my computer, for one thing. I do want to say, though, that we owe a big, big debt of thanks to this year's judges, who were Tom Easton, Karen Euler, Muir Lafferty, Patricia McEwen, and James Salas. And I can tell you that this year's judges did not have an easy task. There was no one runaway winner. But the judges did feel that all of the nominees were very strong books. And one of the judges actually contacted me privately after it was all over and said, "Thank you so much for letting me be a judge this year. I found all these books that I never would have come across otherwise, and they were really good." And, this was, as none of the judges were exactly rookie readers. This is a veteran reader who was really impressed by the books coming out this year. So with that said, I won't drag it out any longer. This year's special citation goes to, I didn't bring an envelope, The Little Animals by Sarah Tolmie from Aqueduct Press. I wish we had a way of getting a video of me handing the check to Sarah Tolmie. Did I mention that the award is good old money? I should mention that unlike other awards that give out trophies, we just give the winners a check. Speaking of winners, we do have one this year. And for those of you who haven't already skipped to the end of the video to see who wins, I'm so tempted to mess with it, and I won't resist temptation. This year's PKD award goes to Sooner or Later, Everything Falls into the Sea by Sarah Pinsker.
Thank you for tuning in to the Philadelphia Science Fiction Society and Norwescon's virtual presentation of the 2019 Philip K. Dick Awards. We would like to once again thank the authors for taking the time to record the readings for us. We would also like to thank the team of volunteers that worked to put this together. Volunteering is, as always, the engine that drives fandom and glues our community together, but especially so right now. Thank you, William Sedaris, Gordon Van Gelder, Kathy Bond, Alan Bond, Anita Taylor, and Don Glover. We would also like to thank all of our community partners who helped to spread the word. Mopop, File 770, Marcon, Locus, and many others. As our chair, Tanya Clark, said at the top of the presentation, we hope to see all of you in person at Norwescon in 2021. We would also like to thank all of the publishers who contributed books for consideration for this year's award. Thank you, and good night.